In this video, I'm going to be discussing and philosophizing on virtueness, and particularly self-virtueness and the self-virtues, and how virtues of the mind, and particularly when we're thinking about things like our strengths and strengthenings of the mind, how this ultimately can improve the quality and states of our everyday experiences, but not just the states and qualities of our everyday experiences, but increase the frequency as well as the continuity of positivity and strengths that tend to have a positive impact on our surroundings. And this is ultimately the real key to virtuousness, is not just how, say, our strengths or individual conducts or enactments can, or embodying, can, say, influence us positively in a positive direction that tends to optimize our well-being, but it tends to radiate and be radiant to our surroundings and encompass us in a way that tends to expand the very virtue and positivity, as well as sources of strengthening and insight and knowledge in regards to an individual's strengths and strengthenings, that tend to really inspire and tend to promote greater positivity, not just within the self, but in the surrounding environment, and in which other people tend to look upon individuals who are exhibiting and expressing their self virtues and their strengths, as well as their process of the dynamical strengthening and obtaining a greater sense of masterfulness through active, meaningful interest and engagement and their individual autonomy, as well as their contemplative thought and thinking process that tends to be differentiable and distinguishable from others, and which tends to captivate our attention and pull us because we tend to admire and aspire towards what tends to embody elements of greatness or the good and the virtuous, and individual strengths and competencies tend to be things that we prize in society, and we tend to recognize the virtues of self when individuals are expressing a good character or their character essence. And it's not so much the character, but the essence of that character that's being embodied through these self virtues in particular that originate from the self and have an origin in regards to directing the intents and purposes of meaning in relation to the ego. And this altogether is associated with an individual's masterfulness or self-knowledge and integration of that within more of their self-direction and integratedness within the world, often cultivated through contemplative existential practices or embodying, in which individuals tend to identify their strengths and the characters of the mind and develop a deeper knowledge and understanding of existence. And it's this knowledge and self-knowing in regards to an individual's own existence that can lead to greater masterfulness through understanding how the synthesis of the mind and natural knowledge of the world that surrounds an individual in regards to the goods and the necessities, and also the common existential concerns and issues that tend to influence ill well-being, but also when we address them appropriately and we can develop a deeper sense of meaningfulness, we can promote positivity, often through our strengths and our competencies and our contemplative thoughts and our meditations or philosophizing that allow us to gain a grasp and understanding of our own condition in situations, and then also being able to address them appropriately and effectively. Um, and as we tend to engage more with our meaningful interests and also our everyday engagements in the world, we tend to develop knowledge alongside those interests, those curiosities and engagements, through actually engaging meaningfully with embodying states that are actively being shaped and molded alongside our environment, and through the self precepts, developing knowledge through these sensory apparatuses, but also our perceptual apparatuses that involve our subjective experiences, that contains the total sum of our subjective thoughts and experiences, as well as the contents of our consciousness and our working mind. And virtuousness ultimately is exemplified by individuals who demonstrate a high degree of self-virtue and a willingness to engage meaningfully in the world, not so much for others' sake or through authority figures, but through their own volitions and through their own freedom of consciousness and willingness to engage their strengths and engage meaningfully in the world, and volitionally doing so, and through the volitions of their own mind and the freedoms of their own conscience, they tend to promote greater virtue through how they tend to differentiate themselves and have these distinguishing thoughts and mannerisms of expression through their various forms of embodying that really exemplify the characters of great individuals and the states and traits and behaviors and goods that we and necessities that we want to emulate, and which we admire and which we value as a society through their contributions and their enterprisings and what they produce in terms of their own efforts and meaningful interests and engagements and enterprisings. So that's all I wanted to say for self-virtuousness. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good one. Bye.